relative basis, I wanted to ask you about these arguments that value is dead. You've heard a lot of them, and I tried to. I'm a big value guy like you are, but I tried to write an article a while back where I tried to make the case against value stocks, and I talked about technology has changed things, or low interest rates have changed things. I tried to make all the arguments people have made, and I wasn't able to convince myself. But I'm just wondering, when you look at all that, do you see anything that's happened here that would lead you to question value, or do you think this is all really just another long period of underperformance like many we've seen in the past?
So on anything like this, I always sit back and try to think like, well, why does anything earn money, right? And so if you think about securities, you basically get paid one of three ways. You're going to have earnings growth, you're going to have a current dividend yield you receive, and then you're going to have to sell this asset again, right? And there's going to be some sort of valuation component of your return. And so if you look at like value, why the hell does value work? Well, so presumably value or the economy and all stocks are going to grow roughly their earnings growth rate with the overall economy, plus or minus, something. And then you're going to have that dividend yield. Well, and then you're going to have this valuation change. So with value, you usually get the generic earnings growth, or maybe it's a little bit crappier in the short run and it kind of mean reverts back to normal. So you kind of win, lose. It's, you're hanging tough there. On the dividend yield, you obviously generally get a higher carry with value because the dividend yields you're buying at are typically higher than the alternatives. And then where you usually, get the wins on value is that you buy something at a PE of 5, and then in 5 years, whatever, you can turn around and sell for a PE of 10, right? That valuation difference. And so when someone asks me, hey, is value going to work in the future? I would just say the following. I was like, well, do you think that the firms will have some sort of earnings growth? You obviously need earnings growth to have an E, which you would get paid a P for at some point. So, okay, if you think they're going to grow with the general economy, good. Or even lower in the economy, fine. Are you buying them at higher yields than overall market? That's a bird in the hand, right? If you're buying stocks that are paying 3% yield and the market is a 1.5% yield, you're banking 1.5 for sure. So if you get that, that's kind of like, that's great. And that could offset any sort of poor earnings growth you have. And then the final component is like the change in the valuation. So at the end, when you sell it, you buy the thing at 5. Are you going to sell it at 3 times PE? Are you going to sell it at 5? Or are you going to maybe sell it at 10? So for value to work, and presuming how it's worked in the past, generally when you buy dirt balls, you buy them at 5, you on average get to sell them at a little bit higher. But let's just throw that away. Let's say that doesn't happen. You buy it at 5 PE, you got to buy it at 5 PE again. Great, that's a wash. And that would suck for value premium, right? Then the other component is the carry. You're buying at a dividend yield of 3, the market is 1.5, and let's assume payout ratios are the same, roughly. Well, you're always banking 1.5% spread. So that's going to contribute to your value premium. But then let's look to the earnings growth component. If you believe that, the overall growth of like this basket of value stocks is going to be substantially different over a long horizon than, the overall market, you could lose out there, right? So it's just these 3 levers you can pull to make money on any sort of stock. And I don't see why there'd be any reason to believe that value stocks don't generally grow roughly with the economy on average over time. Let's say they do a little bit less because they're not Google. But remember, Google's not the economy either. That's just one piece of it. The dividend yield you get to bank for sure. And then I still believe that humans are crazy and they generally throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I believe personally that you'll always get on average this expectation revision component over time as well as like an extra little kicker to the value premium. But who knows? Maybe that doesn't happen. And that's why value wouldn't work. Shitty earnings growth, dividend yield is so good, but the earnings growth kills it. And then instead of selling it at 5 PE, it ends up being even worse than anyone could ever think. And you sell it at 3 PE. That's how value underperforms, basically.